Hey girl!
Hey mama!
Ready to get unschooled?
Totally!
Welcome to Moms Unschooled,
where we break down all the things from the mundane to the magnificent, so you can think for yourself and do what's right for you.
Welcome to Moms Unschooled.
Hey there, welcome. This is Erin.
And I'm Sarah. We're so glad you're listening today. So, Miss Erin, I thought we would start off today by talking about why we are doing this podcast, the impetus for it, and like any great cultural phenomenon, as this podcast will be, what is our origin story,
it's
right?
Probably a good place to start.
I do think so. We kind of got this idea a couple weeks ago, right before everyone was trying to make a decision about what to do best for their family as far as sending kids back to school in this crazy pandemic, whether or not to travel, all of those decisions. And with those decisions about family and doing what's best for you, often can come a lot of judgment and shame and guilt. And I just found it so refreshing that we could sit on your patio and just like be honest about stuff.
I think honesty is the healthiest route to go with anything, but particularly in a stressful time such as a pandemic and huge decisions for your family. And so a podcast was born.
It was.
Sarah came up with this idea. I think as people come in and out of conversation on our patio, sitting there chatting, people were interested. All people are talking about this right now. So why not let it out there for all the world to hear? Because we all have the same questions in mind, and we want to know that we are not alone, and we want you to know that you're not alone.
Yes, and as we were talking, we really were on this theme of do what's right for you. Like if you want to homeschool your kids, if you want to go in a van for 3 months and travel around Europe or wherever you are, great, sounds good. Because I've been reading this book. It's really good so far. It's called Forget Having It All by Amy Westervelt. The subtitle is great. It says How America Messed Up Motherhood. And chapter 1 title, she has Being a Mother Shouldn't Suck, which is really interesting. And she starts off by saying that this idea of motherhood, it is not one fixed experience. In turn, it is a cultural norm that we perpetuate by going along with kind of these ideas of what we think mothers should be doing, things like that. And she compares the system of motherhood, which she calls a system governed by shared values in a patriarchal institution, and wants people to move toward this idea of mothering as an experience and sharing our experience of mothering versus conforming to this idea of what, quote, motherhood is.
Love it.
And I liked that when we had those conversations on the patio, you were so honest. And I was very surprised by things you were sharing with me because I had this idea in my head about, oh, of course the former PTA president's going to be sending her kids to school, you know? Stuff like that. So one of the things this author talks about in the book, which I thought was interesting, is this idea of we're always treating women as pre-pregnant. In terms of when they're little girls, oh, here's a baby doll, or how many kids do you want when you grow up? What kind of mom are you going to be? Are you going to be a working mom? Da, 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 da. And we don't treat men as pre-paternal.
Interesting.
Yeah. You had mentioned one time, when does this idea of like mom guilt or mom shame even begin? And what can we do to kind of get unschooled about what it means to be a mom and move more towards sharing our own experiences about mothering?
Sure. Well, to answer that, I think the shaming starts even when we're little girls.
Okay.
The mom shaming, if you want to go all the way back to that. My initial answer was, well, the questions arise, we're treated as pre-pregnant. The shaming starts post-pregnant. But that's not the case. When you're asked as a little girl how many kids you want and you say none, people are already, oh, yes, you will.
Oh,
Don't
yeah.
you like playing with babies? But you're such a good big sister. The shaming has already started. Mom shaming starts when we're tiny.
Yeah, and in the book, one of the things the author talks about too is we kind of push little girls into maternal experiences such as babysitting and other things like that, which I thought was interesting. I'd never thought about that before.
Your daughter should be baking with you in the kitchen. Well, my son likes to bake cookies just as much as my daughter. So we're putting all this pressure. Oh, they need to learn how to deal with measuring cups at such an early age. And so shaming is such an integral part of our lives, unfortunately, but it starts way, way back. But I also want to start about the definition between shaming and guilt.
Yes, please, because I think I get these confused a lot of the time, so let's hear it.
My personal idea of what shaming is other people or things putting judgment on you.
Okay.
An external factor.
Okay.
So let's say, like the dictionary.com, a quick definition of shaming would be disgrace. His actions brought shame upon his parents.
This, as you're talking about this, and especially since we're in Europe, this is a perfect example of how this is cultural, right? Because several years ago, I did study abroad in Florence, Italy, and one of the directors of the program was like, I swear she was 7 or 8 months pregnant, and she was just chain smoking and drinking wine. Mm-hmm. And that was just acceptable and a cultural norm for them. And here we were, these little college students, like staring at her aghast, like, what is going on? We had never seen that before. We didn't know how to react. And so essentially, she could care less, which good on her. But we were like unconsciously shaming her by staring at her and watching if she was going to have another drink and things like that.
Sure. So shaming is from an outside factor, whereas guilt, my personal definition, would be judging ourselves in a negative light.
Okay, so she did not feel guilty about
right.
that. So she was living her life.
So shame and guilt are different.
Okay.
And so dictionary.com says guilt is a feeling of responsibility or remorse for some offense, whether real or imagined. So I feel guilty about such and such. It may not be real or perceived by others, but I have put that on myself. It's an internal factor.
I love that you said that, because when we had just a couple seconds ago talked about the babysitting example, I never wanted to babysit. I did it a handful of times. I don't know why they asked me to, because as a general population, I typically don't like small humans. So I was very surprised. But I always kind of felt pressure either from other people, like, why wouldn't you want to babysit?
Right. You're a female, young female who wants to make money, and babysitting is good practice for you. It's a win-win.
Yeah. No, thank you.
Boom. Shame.
Yes. Yeah. And I always felt kind of like, I don't know, weird that like little kids always loved my sister, like even like our little cousins and stuff like that. I just don't understand them that well I'm very much more comfortable with like middle school age kids. But I never had that kind of, oh, I'm a female, so I want to work with kids, I want to help kids, blah, blah, blah.
Right. So the shame was there. The guilt may or may not have been there. Then there's this third word I'd like to bring into the equation called ashamed. Anybody ever felt that one before? And I tend to think of it as allowing guilt and or shame to rule a part of your life.
Okay.
So whether you're ashamed in your thoughts or you're feeling ashamed and it is seen in your actions, it is a feeling of being distressed or embarrassed by your feelings of shame or guilt. So I think ashamed is this gray area in between guilt. Is this gray area between guilt and shaming that now we've put on ourselves from inward and outward factors.
So it was raining the other day. Let's say you're a mom and you put your kid on the school bus and you walked away and thought, I just sent him in with a t-shirt, shorts, and no raincoat.
Okay, so you are being mom shamed by everyone else at the bus stop.
Who was staring and making comments like, oh, they're okay in a t-shirt?
Wow, he must have really thick skin.
Yeah.
So now you're feeling guilty. Now you're walking home to your warm house and you can put your Ugg boots on and now feeling ashamed from guilt and shame.
I think that might be like where Ugg got their name. They like knew we were going to be just hot messes and needed comfort. And they were like, don't be ashamed, be Uggs. And so
Uggs, if you're listening.
Yeah, hey. And so, okay, so in that scenario, this did not, I don't know, it may or may not have happened to me. But so let's say in that scenario, so I get my Uggs on. Because I'm ashamed, I would probably sit down on Amazon and order like 3 raincoats.
Right.
And all of those actions are out of feeling guilt.
Sure. And shame. You were shamed and you're feeling guilty.
Yes. Okay. Got it.
With that, who shames moms?
Who doesn't?
Exactly.
I mean, when I was before I was a mom, I don't think I outwardly shamed people, but in my head, I was definitely that person like, why is your child screaming in the grocery store? Like, you need to handle this. Like,
right.
Or use another line. And now when that happens, I'm like, hey girl, can I help you unload your grocery cart? Or if I have something in my purse like that a child would like, I'll dig down to the bottom and like give the kid whatever just to distract them so their mom can freaking load the dog food onto the conveyor belt.
Because we've all been there. Let's not shame each other. Let's take care of each other because we've all had meltdowns in the grocery store. So let's start with that. Other moms can shame us. And there's a difference between judging and they can't tell that we're judging with our eyes. But then there's the actual shame where a mom could come up to you at the playground and you're giving your child a snack and they say, oh, you let your kids eat that?
We don't use things with red dye number 5.
Right. Oh, you ate your Lunchable out of a plastic container?
You don't grill your own organic food and give it to your children every day?
Boom! Are you seeing examples of shaming? Not allowed anymore. We are all in survival mode.
I had one recently that, I don't know, sometimes I wonder if it's more about the inadequacy of the person doing the shaming. We were talking about the GI Bill, and a couple years ago, I went back to school to get my PhD, and I used, my husband had earned the post 9/11 GI Bill. Mm-hmm. And you can, depending on which GI Bill you have, you can separate it between people, between months, things like that. And I was talking about it, and she made a comment that said, oh, I could never take that away from my kids. And I didn't say anything. And I went home later and I was like, I am doing it for my kids and my family. I'm just giving them something else in a different way. And I was really pissed. I just thought it was hurtful and it was uncalled for. And then I had to wonder, was it more about that person's feelings of maybe potential inadequacy that they were choosing not to go back to school? I don't know. So that recently happened. That happened like probably 4 weeks ago.
Well, and a lot of times we shame because of our own questionable things that are going on in our lives. And we have no perception on people behind closed doors.
That's true. And to that lady, I finished faster than I thought. So we have a year left. So in case she's wondering, we have 12 months left of the GI Bill, lady.
And we are rocking it.
Yes.
No, I was on a plane once with my own children, and there was another mother with a child bigger than mine. He might have been 6 or 7, okay? And if you're out there, lady, this is for you. He was screaming the entire flight. And
as I will add, as most children do.
Right. And I was looking over at my 3 thinking, yes, it's not us today, because we just assume flying on an airplane with 3 children is going to be one of the worst days of your life. And, we had it so far so good. This other woman had the screaming child. Mm-hmm. And I kept thinking, wow, I'm just glad it's not my own. I'm glad it's not my own. And we got off the airplane and we went to go get our luggage at the luggage turnstiles, And this child had a pacifier in his mouth.
He was 6 or 7?
6 or 7.
Okay.
And
again, I just did it. I just did a micro shaming.
Right.
Well, yeah. Okay. Go ahead.
And wait for it. We got to talking, and I think I just said something like, "You made it, Mama. Oh. We all got here." And she says, "That was an experience. We just adopted him."
Oh.
And he's had a rough life up until this point. We're happy to have him home. That was quite a flight. We're ready to now start adjusting as a family.
I bet that meant so much to her that you went up and said you made it. Versus what's wrong with your kid?
And who would have ever thought that was the story?
Oh my gosh. Do you think before you had your own kids, you would have done the same thing?
No, I would have been judging. I wouldn't have been shaming. I'm way too passive aggressive for that.
Okay.
But I would definitely have been judging.
That's interesting.
I was so thankful for that moment of clarity. And man alive, to this day, I'm rooting her on.
Yeah, so I definitely see how other moms are a huge culprit of shaming. One thing we had talked about before is the work from home versus stay at home mom thing. Have you felt shame or judgment or guilt in that arena?
Well, I'm a stay at home mom and I work from home. We're all living life. I keep saying all the time, we're all in survival mode. Like, do we have a happy family? Do we have a healthy family? We're winning. So the working moms versus stay-at-home moms, I've seen it go both ways. Now, working from home moms, I think you could probably talk about that a little bit more. But the stay-at-home versus working away from home moms, I think stay-at-home moms, there's been some that look at them like, how could you be gone away from your child all day long? They're at school and then you dump them into daycare till you get home. I mean, where's your family time? Versus the working mom saying to the stay-at-home mom, I've built a career. I spent a lot of money to earn this degree, to get this education, to make money for my family. I am proud of that. We need this paycheck.
Right.
I need to continue to work so when that child is in school, we are just growing and growing my career and as a family. So I think those two do a lot of fighting.
And I think the shaming goes beyond just the decision to stay at home or not. Again, at the playground, this is like ground zero for all this stuff, right? So at the playground, also a couple weeks ago, when they announced in our school area that the kids were going to go back to school, and there are certain measures you have to follow before you send them, like taking a temperature, making sure they don't have symptoms of COVID or any other sickness. A mom said to me, and I need to follow up and figure out if she actually said, I'm pretty sure she sent her kids to school, but she said, one of the things I've been thinking about is what kind of kids am I going to be sending my kids to school with? Children of the dual working families, like those parents don't have time to pay attention to whether their kids are sick or not. And I want to be like, lady.
Yikes.
And she works at the school. Oh my goodness. I was like, whoa. So stuff like that, even if you want to think it, keep it to yourself until you have the self-awareness to not say stuff like that. That's what you need to get unschooled about. I don't know. I was very taken aback by that. So
it's so much unschooling.
And it's a working mom shaming another working mom, essentially. And I have several friends here who went on an adventure and came to Europe so they could both work and their kids could have great experiences, who are doing the best they can. My one good friend has 3 kids who are right now all in 3 different schools, and she has to pay basically a full-time nanny because with the school aftercare stuff is not open to everyone right now. And I think she's an excellent mom. And when I'm with her, she's way more patient than me half the time. And they're a great family. And then when that lady at the playground said that, I was just like, girl. And I probably went over to find you and was like, do you have any wine? This is like too much.
And I said, well, yes, I do.
Yes, you did, actually.
Okay, so we can just decide right here and now, working moms versus stay-at-home moms need to cut it out. Give each other grace. And it's perspective, ladies. We have no idea. We have never walked in her shoes.
So get yourself unschooled. Maybe go back to school. Use the GI Bill. Maybe don't. Whatever. I don't care. But don't tell me what to do.
Okay, so speaking of working mothers, how about those employers? Is there any mom shaming involved in that?
I did get asked one time, and it's illegal to ask this, but at an interview before I had kids, I got asked straight up, do you plan on getting pregnant? And I was like,
mole.
Yeah, which they always tell you in those little training webinars, like what to do to illegal interview questions. I can't remember what I said at the time, but that was a female asking me that, first of all, totally inappropriate. And I think now recently, since more people are working virtually, and a lot of people don't have choices. So just like on this podcast, we've made a conscious decision not to edit it in the sense that we're going to cut out if we have kids interrupting or dogs, because that's just life. So now that more people are working from home, if my son, pops on a call, I'm not as crazy about it. Versus before, I would be totally embarrassed probably.
Sure. Life is going a different direction. And so with that comes flexibility from all. Employers, I think they're doing better and better in terms of hiring mothers. You're not the only one who's been asked if
really
you plan to get pregnant or have children. Someone interviewed at the school and was asked if they had children.
Were they asking, this is another episode that we can do. Were they asking because they had the assumption that if you have kids, you're a better teacher type thing?
No idea.
Well, you can't
you're
ask
not supposed to ask anyway. So we have a long way to go when it comes to employers shaming and, quite frankly, legalities of it all.
I was going to say, and the fact that these are like well-paid, supposedly highly educated people
who work with children.
Yeah. Well, I don't think we can leave an episode about shame and guilt without talking about social media. And I have made a conscious decision to not sugarcoat any social media posts I make about my family. Meaning, and this is probably why I don't post hardly anything, because yes, we'll have a vacation. There will be great parts about it, and there will be terrible parts about it. And I've always felt bad taking a snapshot of that, joyful moment, knowing that my son, had a tantrum right before it or pooped his pants later or something like that. I just think it's disingenuous. I don't think it means you can never share what your family's doing. I just don't appreciate the rosy filter all the time.
Absolutely. And you recognize that there's a rosy filter on Facebook. A lot of us, especially if we're having a bad day, it doesn't register and quite frankly can make us more depressed. Now, the mom shaming, I wouldn't call it necessarily intentional shaming. When Laura posts a beautiful selfie of her and her family on the beach.
Gosh, Laura. We don't know Laura. So we're just, but yeah.
And if I'm having a bad day, that only makes me more depressed because I have a kid that just puked all over my sweater and the husband is on a work trip and so-and-so is getting detention, whatever. A, B, C, D. Our life in that 5 seconds doesn't look like butterflies and rainbows. And so the mom shaming of, oh, look how perfect this is. Really, I'm actually hurting inside too, is actually affecting other people negatively. Now, that is on us as people who scroll Facebook, who scroll Pinterest. It is up to you to decide how you want to look at these posts and these pictures. If it's for information, if it's for keeping up with of loved ones far away, if it's I just want ideas for little Jimmy's birthday party. Things that you see online are not real. They are not the 100% real of what is going on in those people's lives. And as long as we can look at it as an information based, such as Pinterest, I just want to look at travel. I don't care how awesome their Instagram pictures look in Venice. I just want to know where to go with kids. Versus Facebook page, Laura and those great looking selfies. Well, I never can get a selfie. What is wrong with us? No. Facebook, Pinterest. Let's keep social media for what it's actually for.
And I'm sorry, I have to, Laura or whoever, stop. I don't know. Just share something genuine, real, or don't share at all. I think that's the issue I'm having. And even I love that you had mentioned which I don't know if you said Jimmy or Billy or whoever. We're gonna have our own unschooled family here pretty shortly, but knowing my son, he is just wants to live his life, wants to do the highly energetic activities. One of his birthday parties, which is actually the first one I only ever did for him because it's the first time he asked. I wasn't just going to do it just because. I didn't stop and present the cake. I didn't make everyone sing to him unless he wanted it, right? Mm-hmm. I didn't force the other kids to sit there and watch him open presents and take pictures and post all this stuff about it. He just had a blast. And I remember some other moms were there and they were like, oh, do you want us to record this part when you bring out the cake? And I was like, no, thank you. Which I appreciated they asked that, but I just wanted to be there and enjoy him in the moment. Yes. Because the party was for him. It wasn't for me to show what I did or...
Every snack has a Pokemon theme to it.
Yes.
That's cute. Which is that's great. Your jam.
If you have that party, I want to come. Yes. That sounds awesome.
And if Jimmy loves Pokemon snacks and you're doing it for him, so be it. And take a picture if it's cute. Give me some ideas. But things for Pinterest, Facebook, let's remember that it all comes back. we are using those to make ourselves maybe a little bit better for our families. If your son doesn't care about Pokemon-themed snacks and he just wants to have a Nerf gun fight,
yes,
let's gear it toward there and be happy with ourselves, mamas, when we go to bed that night.
I love it.
Right back to happy kids, healthy kids, then you're winning today.
Yes. Thanks for listening to Moms Unschooled.
Subscribe on YouTube, follow us on Facebook, or email us at momsunschooled@gmail.com. Juicy!